Okay, so all of you are investing money in companies, right? And rightly so, you have seen probably a large number of companies from across the country. And obviously, when you come here, you've seen companies functioning here. You made some impressions today. First of all, let me just start with by asking you, what was the first impression that you got here when you first of all came and saw this place? That is one, of course, but then also the entrepreneurs that you met, and you've seen about 12 of them today, and you also worked intensely the entire day with one. Okay, so first of all, beginning with you, what do you feel? Your impressions, first impressions.
So it's actually been a very pleasant surprise. When you come here, it's a kind of a quasi-government accelerator. You feel that sectoral kind of preconceived notion that it's northeast, so it will be a lot of agri, and that has been there. But at the same time, there's so much. Even in the traditional spaces of entrepreneurship in the region, or traditional businesses in the region, there's innovation, there's lots of new thought coming. One thing that I really liked was that almost everybody that we heard today was very real. They were very, you would not feel that it's a tier 2, tier 3 town, so it's like a different from what they had the smarts, they had the knowledge, they knew what they were talking about, and their mission and vision statements were very clear. But more than anything, these were real entrepreneurs. They were not playing the valuation game, which has become something of a bugbear for the sector. There's something that bothers me at times, is that there are too many entrepreneurs playing the valuation game, but these are actually trying to build real businesses, and there's new and fresh thought in the existing sectors. So that's something I'm really impressed with, and I'm taking back a very positive impression from here.
Thank you, Tarun. What about you, Shruti? What do you feel?
So I'll probably contrast this, because this is not the first time that I've had the chance to kind of come here or get exposed to the Northeast as a startup ecosystem. We invested here in 2013, and since then have been kind of in touch with the space. I am actually kind of really surprised that this has not been on the general startup map before today. The quality, and it was during our the big sessions as well, but I think in person that clarity of thought I think is much better. What I think, that's the good part, that's the first good impression, that I never thought, even while walking into this space, I saw that board with startups listed, some of them which were part of the kind of accelerator and some of them otherwise. It's like every town, I was in Dehradun just yesterday, I was mentioning this to you, it's almost like every town or city in India right now is bubbling with co-working spaces, with startups built for that particular region, that geography, right? So I see no reason why, again, it can't be done here, especially because you have the cumulative ability of many states, and it's tough to operate, right? For people who are not from the Northeast, it's not an easy market to come in, set up shop and do business as normal. That is an added advantage which I would say entrepreneurs have today. And it's good to kind of see this. What I would still kind of think needs more kind of, or what has remained same from 2013 and now, I think is still the level of, I guess, just access to the main ecosystem of investors or fundraising, or what does a business need, or storytelling, if I may use the word. I think that is one element which still needs more work, and it's kind of the same where it was 2013. So the numbers have increased, the quality and the focus of entrepreneurs that I see today is definitely way more than what we saw in 2013. And but I think that finishing of whether you are, and again, you don't need to be. All businesses don't need to raise from VCs. I keep on saying this. But if you do, then what do you need for it? I think that missing gap remains. But I'm hoping that with all these efforts, we will be able to kind of get there.
Storytelling. Yeah. Okay. So Ranjit, thank you. So this is your first trip to the Northeast.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you come primarily from the technology background and really deep into technology. And so you've seen something today. So what are your views?
I would say that in terms of the people and I've actually interacted earlier, worked earlier with folks from the Northeast, in Pune, in Bangalore, and things like that. So I have a sense for how they go about doing things. So some of that was not a surprise. The dedication, the focus, the integrity. I think all of that was pre-expected, well known to me. But landing here, seeing the building, the way it's set up, I think that was a very, very pleasant surprise. And I think the focus comes to just entering the building, the way it's set up. You know that there are different floors for different functions, and yet it's nicely. Every landing area has a mural. It's just all the small touches, the fantastic attention to detail. I think it's a very nice working space. So that was a very pleasant surprise. I loved it. Talking about the entrepreneurs themselves, I would say I think they have a deep fire. That's one of the reasons I wanted to come down here. My first time ever out here. But having spoken to them previously, I could see that there's tremendous dedication, fire, the desire to do things, and some things were getting in the way. And so I guess we are all here to help remove those hurdles. And those hurdles are basically tangible ones, not intangible ones. So I'm super excited about this. I think there's a lot to be gained now. Some guidance, some mentoring, some training maybe, and then we're going to have some fantastic entrepreneurs. That's what I would say, even from a deep tech perspective.
Thank you.
I think personally, my first impression, Gaurav, when I came here I loved it. I actually took out my phone camera and I shot photographs of some of the positive messages that are there all over this building. Right? That's a personal anecdote I'm sharing because I truly loved it. I think Kankan must have seen that. Upon coming here and upon meeting at least the team that I met, I was obviously very impressed. I wouldn't say I'm positively surprised because I never like to judge a place before I come, but I think that once I did and I see it from this angle, I think it's once I come here and I see it from what was shown in terms of the product, what was shown in terms of maturity of thought and confidence. I'm very impressed, and I think in my particular case, there's a potential synergy I feel with the company I was introduced to, like I told you. So I'm really looking forward to being part of this, and I'm glad I made the travel. Initially, when I traveled, I had to take a connecting flight. It took me 6 hours to come here, and I don't regret it now. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, I go back to Subodhip now. This is an evolving, rather fairly, I wouldn't even call it an evolving, I would call it a fairly nascent ecosystem. And we definitely don't have investors sitting this side. We don't even have an angel network this side. Across the states, we don't have any of the 78 states. So, what do you feel is, what do you think that, how could we develop this ecosystem? What are your thoughts on that? As in, how to get the investor game rolling here? Do you think that it should come in from within the state? If it is, then how? Or if we are talking about mainstream coming this side, then how do you think that would happen? What would be, a way out of, because without funding, most of these guys would probably lose out because they may have something really good going with them, but support is required, right? And it's just not funding; it's also the expertise that comes along with the money, right? So that becomes extremely crucial for when you're talking about scaling up, right? So how do you feel? And I'm asking this question because this JICA program is primarily to do with growth, as we're talking about scaling up and moving to newer geographies. However, that would require funding. So that's the perspective I come from. So how do you think we could do this, solve this piece out?
See, I think when we always think about this region from an outside-in perspective or from a investor who's geography agnostic perspective, one thing which people struggle with is often market size. That becomes a kind of impending number that, oh, it's kind of small or it's fragmented, scattered, etc. And that is one level of, I think, a strong reason why investors have probably not been so excited till date. Now, to solve for that, there are, you always need that one, kind of flag bearer or two flag bearers to emerge and move actually beyond these geographies, become a national company or like go global or plug into that. And then there are others who follow suit. And once that first one or two successes come out, I think money follows. When people realize that, okay, this is not just for the Northeast or just for a specific region and market size is actually not restricted only to this area but can go global or national or whatever. I think that line of thought is going to be very important for external investors or generalists or whoever to come in. There is still risk. There is still, we've learned as well. We were quite early to the game here. Our thesis was okay, but I think in terms of just kind of scaling the company, it was very difficult to do so, right? So now when we think of the local kind of players and ecosystems and other regions, I think other regions, there's always been an angel network first and then which is developed, whether it's a Bangalore or whether it's a Chennai or whether it's traditional money, even Kolkata for that matter. The angel network comes from a lot more traditional sources of capital as opposed to, let's say, Bangalore, but it is there. I'm not sure if the businesses here get that about startups yet. So I think it will be the first option as opposed to expecting angel networks to develop here. That would be my hunch, going by what I see. But if we can solve for, or if certain companies can solve for the image being broken that, hey, if you're in the Northeast, doesn't mean that we will remain in the Northeast. I think that would go a long way to help catalyze more companies.
But looking at the chicken egg story,
Sorry?
Looking at the chicken and egg story,
yes.
It's the same case, right? Yeah. But how do you get your first poster boy out from here, poster girl out from here? That's the bigger part, right? Because till the time one doesn't go up, you don't get the next ones in.
Correct.
So how do we solve that issue? Because here it doesn't seem that the local ecosystem can or is supporting it. So
yeah. So one way is to kind of, for whoever is engaging with companies at an early stage, whether it's today here or any one of us, I think the goal would be to always try and help them think slightly bigger, if I can use the word. I think it's not an ability issue. It's more about them being able to say that, okay, why can't I do this in Delhi? Why can't I do this elsewhere? We had a great discussion, with Zizira earlier today. And I was like, if you're doing this kind of turmeric, better buyers are actually guys like Starbucks who are selling turmeric latte, right? Then somebody here doing wholesale. So fight for those kind of things to kind of, and then news will reach, and then you will find somebody who will take early stage risk. I think there is also at least talks about kind of a fund to be set up dedicated for the region, etc., by World Bank or some government. that could definitely be a starting point, which a professional fund manager then runs in. Netflix, of course, is doing its bit, but more would not hurt. That way is, I think. And there will be sporadic, I guess, checks coming in, like here and there for sure.
So I'll take it with you, Vatsan. What do you feel? You coming from another place altogether, which is very different, and your way of investing is very different from normal VC. So how do you think? I mean, people like you could be a part of this, or would want to take a part of this actively.
Yeah, so just to sort of take a segue from what he said, I think that if gone are the days where you have to think of just the local market, right? It's not that, let's learn from Israel. Israel is probably at the top of deep tech, high tech, globally. Israel's local population is less than a small town in India. They don't have market, but how do they test it? Israel's model is they test locally and they supply offshore. The biggest market for Israel is the United States of America and China. I think the Northeast can look at Israel as an example. Look at specialized tech, look at specialized companies and ship them. And your market should be the whole of India to start with, and then the global market. And then it will cease to be important where you are incorporated. What will become relevant is what's the origin of this company. And the origin is always the founding team. And if today's world of Zoom isn't showing us that, and if Girish from Freshworks isn't showing that, you know, I mean, if the Nasdaq listing for Freshworks isn't showing what you can do globally, then I don't know what is. So you already have a poster boy who came from a non-typical startup city and has now gone public in the US exchange. So I feel like overall think global and try and create a product or a service which is not just for the Northeast market. And I think when people realize that they don't have to evaluate a Northeast company because the Northeast market is smaller, that's when things will change. And I think for that you don't need a poster boy to emerge first. What you need is the right set of people who are willing to invest long-term patient capital with founders in this geography. And I think the government will have a lot of role to play. This is an example where Assam startup together with TAI, together with Jika has done such a great event with IIM Calcutta Innovation Park. I mean, this is an example that people have actually flown down from various parts. So I don't think it's an impossible feat. I just think it needs just continued momentum. And I think this idea of a 3-month post-meeting, continued mentorship is a great idea. And I applaud IIM Calcutta for doing what they've done. Thanks.
Thank you. So, a world-class product, how important is that, Ranjita? Vatsa just mentioned, I think what they need to really do is look at the product or a service from a world-class point of view. That let's create something which can be taken to the world, and so that it doesn't really matter what is the size of the market here. I mean, you're sitting here, but you could be doing for work for others. What your
I will talk a little bit about what he said, because I think to add to that, I would say, because of COVID, I think, we had a lot of discussions, and you had folks who worked in the rest of India who have now, come back and worked in this area back again, right? So locals who stepped out and who've come back. So that's been an infusion of exposure, right? It doesn't mean one exposure is lesser than the other, but there is a Northeast exposure to the Northeast, and then folks having an exposure outside and then coming back here. So that's kind of an infusion of fresh views. Plus, connectivity is getting very good at the internet level. So you have talent here, local talent that maybe never stepped out, but their friends did. And so you have local thinking plus kind of exported from other parts of India now. Plus you have the internet connectivity improving by the month, by the quarter. And so therefore, building a global presence you're kind of beginning to match up to the global expectations, and the ability is there. The people innately have it. There's a deep focus on education throughout the cultures out here, right? So I think the stage is set well. A global product is a fantastic offering, but even if it's not a global, I would say even a pan-India product is easily doable. That's what I would say.
Great. I think that puts into perspective a lot of things, how we can view, or rather gear our startups from here to move in a direction. I'd like to pull in Kaustubh into the conversation. Kaustubh, you've done great in terms of scaling up a business and taking your company to 1,000 crore. Can I have your views on what you feel? Can we hold the mic that side, please? Can I have your views on what you feel? What startups in this region can do to actually scale?
I agree with the points shared by all of them. So startups here have great idea. What they need help in is 2-3 areas. One, to filter out what is core, what is not core. Then get support of the ecosystem in some of the scale-up activities. For example, money is one of them, but there are other ecosystem elements which are currently missing here. So probably someone needs to connect them with the elements of ecosystem which is available somewhere else, even though they are not present here, remotely or whichever ways, but they need to start getting access to those ecosystem components. It can be sales support, marketing support, technology support, any of those legal support, any structuring. There are multiple elements which are required to move the startup to the next level. Probably that access is something which can be facilitated even if they are not there. Third, I think which is already in place, they are not thinking about serving this market. I hardly found anyone who is thinking of catering to the demand in this area. They are largely thinking about national or global market. So that aspiration is there, but probably they don't know how to move forward because they have not seen the ecosystem enablers there. And they are scared to take a step forward because they don't know what will hit them next, because they do not see the support coming in from any of those directions. So start with providing them remote access to other ecosystem support, and then once an example is set, probably ecosystem players will automatically come here as they are mentioning.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to pull in Subodh at this point in time. Subodh, you have a major, government connect here. You worked for a PSU for years, and now you are advising the oil ministry as well as consulting to them. And I was just thinking, how could the government play come into the picture? A lot of these products and services would probably have a need or a market where the government is concerned. How could we help them, or what do you feel should be the way for them forward as to what you've seen today? Your impressions.
See, as I was telling you earlier, that there are several platforms where government advises PSU to buy from the smaller scale startups and industries. So government e-marketplace is one such thing. And there are targets. I will give you the example of Indian Oil Corporation. So there are targets that certain percentage of our purchases should come from the GEM portal. And see, our major major input is crude oil, which is certainly not provided to the GEM. So we requested government to, okay, let us talk about anything other than GEM what we are buying. So that is one thing. Is there probably then there are other such platforms where the government encourages purchases by the industry. Like one more thing has come now, that up to 200 crore whatever the tenders are floated, they cannot be global. It has to be an Indian company. And within Indian company also, if it is a partnership with a foreign company, the foreign company component cannot be more than 50%. So those are the things which are being supported by the government. I can count unless such schemes are there. But while talking to our startup, their experience is there when they go to the very simple thing. They went for the some loan from the bank, and the kind of paperwork was being asked and all those things. So it scared them away. So they are doing this. So those things will always be there, but probably we will have to those kind of very very small things. We will laugh it out that बैंक लोन के लिए क्या चाहिए और किसी का support क्या चाहिए. But probably that is also needed at some point.
How easy has the process become, or I would say what is the ease of access to whether it be the GEM portal or any other platform where the government is buying as a customer or facilitating? How easy has it become over the years?
It has become very very easy now, and the kind of pressure that all the PSUs and railways and all these government departments are having for buying through the GEM portal. So suppose somebody, I will tell you a few examples. Like there are certain things you can buy services also through GEM, not only the product, and even the engineering goods. So list is endless. So suppose somebody is having some product and he wants to get it registered. So initially there will be some hiccups. So, but with the buyer and the seller both coming into the picture, then like in Indian Army we were having this kind of the purchase department, which we call it materials department. So those are the people, they guide all the vendors how to get registered, all those things are provided. Probably the same system will be there for the other PSUs also.
Thank you, Subodh. I'll move the spotlight to Shivan. So Shivan, you've been in the corporate sector for a long time and worked with some of the leading, one of the leading companies. What do you feel? Is there a way, or how could our startups actually connect with corporates and maybe work with them or for them, or how could that connection come in? Especially now I'm talking about startups here that you've seen. I mean, do you think there is an interface where it could come in and it could happen?
I probably am audible. I'm a loud mouth anyway. So, and I think it works more efficiently than that system we have now. So, most of the major corporates do have incubation programs, and they have sectoral focus as well. We've had an example in that healthcare startup 3 years back at INCIP, which was supported by one such corporate in Bangalore. They got their initial funding and also the incubation facility. But what's more important when you do tie-up with corporates is that you do get an access to market, you get access to technology. And as we were having in this little conversation in the morning, right? Sometimes I think we can avoid having this predicament of having to reinvent the wheel if you were aligned with such a startup, because they've already seen this in some part of the world. So I'll give you an example, right? I mean, a lot of the things that we're trying to do in healthcare, especially trying to address the problems of the Northeast, is about access to quality healthcare. Now, if you go to a company like GE or Philips into one of their incubation centers, right, they would be able to access a number of projects that the company would have been involved in similar geographies or similarly challenged geographies globally, and they can bring back learnings, and this would help you really cut down a lot on some of the MVPs otherwise you would have had to run. So I think there is that facility, there is an ecosystem, it's just a matter of reach, and I don't think the distance will make any difference. So wherever the corporates are located, they do have a pan-India focus, so would be easily accessible.
Okay, thank you, Swan. So now let's move on to one question which I think every startup here wants to hear or the answer rather than so you get the okay. No. So honestly speaking, I mean. Okay, let me put it the other way around. Let me make it a little easier for you. Your company as a company now, your organization has been associated with this region for quite some time now, and you do see a lot of change, like you just mentioned. So, going forward, I mean, are you all thinking seriously of, taking some stake here? I'm not talking about here as in, I mean, in the region. And if that would be, then what do you think would be your methodology? How would you come in? Would you invite people over that side? How would it work out if it really works out?
No, I think, I mean, fundamentally our model would change because of the region, right? We will end up backing entrepreneurs, we will end up backing entrepreneurs. I think our interest in the region, I guess post this visit definitely will increase. Just given the different kind of models that we are seeing here. The fact that this region held and we are a food and agri fund, so obviously we knew that there is a lot which can be done from the region. Frankly, it will end up to kind of which team is the one that we think can actually tackle the problem. Because there is so much to be done in terms of the back end. We're, like, even in my conversation today, I was just kind of focusing on the back end with the team I was speaking about, because you can build in a lot if you're working on the supply and your dominance there. Because direct to customer is not an easy game which you can do while bootstrapped. You need a lot of capital for that if you have to do it well. And typically, if you have supply prowess in agri, at least, your ability to build out or be defensible while building out your brand is higher. And I think the other piece which I would think would help us decide better and faster is to also kind of see collaboration. There is a lot of, replication that we see right now, that two people doing the ditto same thing in too small region. That makes it like it doesn't work for anyone, neither party kind of case. So if there is a form where we see some collaboration or we can affect that collaboration in any way, that would, I think, also be an interesting element.
Wonderful. I think that's very, very aptly put, because we've seen that happening a number of times where we find two startups from a particular region, maybe a state apart, and working on the same thing, trying to work together. So I'll bring in Abhilash here from Omnivore also, who's here with us. I'll bring in the conversation. So Abhilash, you work deeply in the agri space, and you have your interest because you come from another background altogether. Now I just want you, could you tell us which are the major, in the agri space, since this is also a region where agri is very, very heavily invested in terms of entrepreneurs are really going towards agri. What do you feel would be subsectors or specific areas where we could see a lot more happening? There's a lot more talent here, so you've seen that today, and probably you have your other experiences as well. Where could they work on, or which are the areas that you feel that there can be real work done properly?
So whenever we look at agriculture across geographies, there are different ways in which various problems are solved, typically bucketed into three larger problem statements. The first one is to ensure that the market linkages are all set, so that whatever the farmers are growing, they are realizing better revenues for that. And that is what we have seen. Indian agriculture, startups working in Indian agriculture, all major funding has gone into that sector. When we talk about Deha, Tarya, Ninja, all these are market linkage players. And we foresee a situation that companies working in that post-harvest market linkage space will get more funding here, wherever that happens. Like what these guys are working on. Again, the revenue relation for the farmers is comparatively lower, considering the high value crop that they are growing. So that has to be improved. When that is solved, we believe that the cost of cultivation has to be the second level of problem that has to be solved. which will need certain technology intervention in the farms, sensors and satellite imagery and so on and so forth. And lowering cost of capital for the farmers will also be important through various institutional debt methods and so on and so forth. Once these two problems are solved, that is when the ag biotech will come into this to increase the yield of the farms. One important thing, this is the trend that happens, that has happened in the other parts of India and in global agriculture as well. But what we see here is the sustainability part of agriculture. Working on biological input or organic farming, that has gone really well in this part of the country, right? I think that is something that might get some amount of funding. Not really organic farming per se, but biologicals per se as inputs could be something, a very interesting play for startups coming up here, or for Indian and global startups to come in and play a part here as well. So I would say market linkage and organic inputs or biological inputs should be something that would play first, followed by technology intervention. This part of the country again is going through a huge amount of climate change activity as well, with the kind of floodings and all that we are seeing over the past few years. So I think that how can we predict weather patterns and tell the farmers that I'm sorry, I'm just being very agri-focused here. No idea about the other sectors. So
that was the intent. That was the intent. That's why I asked you a very pointed question.
Sure. So finding out the weather patterns, can we do long-term weather predictions appropriately? Can we do microclimatic predictions appropriately, and see if we can do in canopy level weather predictions? These are something that might come up with the climate change that we're seeing. So that would be the three top priority, I would say, in terms of investment that we're seeing.
And are these areas where you are also looking for people coming up with solutions?
Yeah, I think that today as well we have seen one drone company, we have seen market linkages company, market linkage, broad-based market linkage, crop-focused market linkage. So these are all very, very interesting sectors to play here. And as Vatsal was also mentioning, grow here, export. These are some very high-value niche crops which are not available in the rest part of the country or even in the world. Right? The queen pineapple from Tripura is something that is famous. Right? Why can't a dole buy from them directly? Right? Similarly, the turmeric from this part, the chili from this part, these are fantastic things that a value chain game can be played in.
Okay. Please go on. Go on.
Just one more point, in terms of what I saw in this area, what can we improve, the kind of questions that we have been answering, is that when the companies that I had interacted with right now, it has all been the promoters. I think we need to also talk about the team. The issue that Subhadeep has been in this game for more than a decade now. What we have seen earlier is that when we run a startup in, let's say, non-metro cities, apart from the Bombay, Bangalore of India, getting and retaining talent has been an issue. That is something that the government can play a big role. Anyways, we are seeing our diaspora is coming back and trying to. We have seen one startup here that has happened. So that has to be promoted in some way. I don't know how, but that has to be promoted in some way, so that if the startups are making their base here, it has to be ensured that they can get talent, they can retain talent. And one other thing would be for the startups and also for the larger startup community here is that we get a lot of inbound in terms of inquiries, people wanting to reach out to us, talk to us. We see a percentage of those startups coming from this part very less, right? Even if I take the entire Eastern India, it is very less. Most of the startups come to us from Bangalore or Bombay or Delhi. The access is there. Accessing us, I think, is the most easiest thing to do. Drop a message on LinkedIn, always happy to get on the call. So I think the startups from here also need to reach out to us and tell us that we are there. That has to happen.
So what I hear from you, you're saying is people don't reach out. So guys, I think you need to reach out to the investors and probably through the right channels, of course, and the right way. But I think that one connect is also not happening.
Yeah, dropping a message on LinkedIn to any of the investors out there is the best way to do it. Everyone is so active on LinkedIn. If they see something interesting, definitely reply, set up a call.
Great. That's a great point. What I'll do is I'll just shift the focus to Hemant. Yes, Kohli. Hi. Hemant, just one very simple question. So you've been associated with startups for a very long time, and you've been mentioning them, majorly. Just could you give us 3 top things that you found when you met startups here? You heard a lot and you've seen 12 of them. Three major areas that you could point out which probably need attention that these startups should focus on.
So, these are 3 universal truths for any startup and any company which is starting out. It's a team. Very important to have, complementary strength, promoters in the, or co-founders in the team. That is something which is, I think, something which needs to be fixed. Some of the companies I saw here, the team, whether it's a tech component or it's a domain component, needs to be, these slots needs to be filled. That is key. So team is the most important for a startup. So structuring that, I think that's a focus area where all these promoters need to focus on and ensure the co-founding team is right there. That would be number 1. The second would be also to have a slightly broader perspective in terms of if a certain need is not getting fulfilled at this point in time in this geography. Initiating a business with that, assuming competition will not move, can be a very dangerous pitfall. So, a broader perspective, I think is key when designing or thinking about foreign, because entrepreneurship is very hard. So it's important you get these key people's right. And the third would be that think big. Once you get on, just don't look at the Northeast business. The Northeast is India. I mean, it's not that you're sitting in a different country and somebody will have to go through hoops to come here and start a business. Think big. The business has to be sustainable all over. I mean, it's not just the local market that they have to look at, the whole Indian market they have to look at. So they need to think big. This is the third thing that I would say. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll move the spotlight to Rahul, sitting very quietly at the back, smiling away for so long. I would have a very specific question. So, we were just speaking about agri here, which is a very major area or a sector here from, there's a lot of focus of the entrepreneurs from the region. But another very major area is also tourism, which we all know is, it's upcoming. It's also, I think, they've got enough and more of beauty around, and these are very picturesque landscapes. And yet we don't find too much of traffic coming in this side of the country. How do you think, first, what is it that is missing in the entire jigsaw puzzle? Which is the piece which is missing right now, you feel? And secondly, what can be done to, take this further so that, we have a lot more coming out of the area? Because we've seen a lot of startups coming in the space, and they not only just look at the travel part, but they look at also the ancillary, stuff around the travel part as well. So, what do you feel?
So, first of all, I would like to congratulate you all for setting up this particular ecosystem and stage for it. I remember Vatsal saying that he flew down from Goa to this particular place. Right? Now, if we talk about tourism in India, I am from Delhi. Delhi I should fly down to Goa, and unke liye nothing is beyond Goa, right? If it's a beach destination, it has to be Goa. Now, at this point of time, especially post-COVID, we need to understand what is the mindset of a traveler. A traveler wants to go to a destination which is not so much overcrowded. He wants to have peace a lot, and most probably he's traveling with family most of the time. What kind of staycations, longer duration travel, locations which you can identify? Most of the destinations, except this part of India, is already overcrowded, sort of overcrowded. This is a place where you can actually do these kind of things, longer stays, where I can work, I can do schools from here, online schooling is there. I can do work from home sort of scenario. I can stay here for almost a month's time, enjoy my time, and then I move back to my own place. Second scenario, why don't I come to this particular place and I focus here? Because what I personally feel, the companies have to market themselves to me, they have to sell me this place. And it's not about cost. People can buy if you add value for them. It's more about if I'm not being marketed well, how would I get to know that I should come down to Gangtok, stay here for a month's time with my family, and then I go back. Government is doing its bit, its part. They're spending on infra, they're building airports, highways, all things are getting built. Are we able to capture on that and focus and share it to the world? Come to this particular place. So if we just start focusing on first thing, I personally feel longer vacations, staycation kind of thing would work perfectly in this place. But I should be told that Rahul, you need to come and stay in this part of the world. And I would definitely love to. I never have been to Northeast India till today. This is the first time I stepped down to Goa, and I love this since morning. The point is, I have to come here first. So the first step has to be taken by the startups who are present here, so that they can, showcase it to the world, and people can come down to this part of the world.
Thank you. And now I'll move on to something slightly different and I think a little more intense. And I'll bring Smita into the picture. Smita, you work on mapping impact. How important would something like this be? For a region like this, where most of the startups are working in the social entrepreneurship space. A very large number. And generally, startups don't generally measure impact. From that point of view, and looking at the kind of startups that you've seen today, you would have a very good idea by now as to how does that really play up in terms of the bigger picture, where people like them, are they really interested in that? And if yes, then what should the startups do to bring that up? Because that portion is generally lost. That part of the story is lost. And Subodhi just spoke about storytelling as one part of it as well. So impact does play a part there as well. So what do you feel?
Thanks, Gaurav. Firstly, I wouldn't necessarily call myself somebody who's very good at impact assessment. I think Subodhi is a better person. I'm still learning from him. But yes, I'm closer to adopting sustainable business practices within the business, and I am trying to keep a little distance from the social responsibility, like corporate social responsibilities area per se, like typical of that. What I would really say is these startups definitely give a good picture of, the landscape does look heavier on the social entrepreneurship stuff, like when I look at them. And in fact, it's funny that we are talking about it today, because just last week, I was talking about this on a panel which was amongst two DFIs were there. IFC was sitting there and FMO. Two of the DFIs were sitting on that panel, and I was having a discussion with them about reimagining the future through responsible investments. And I think it was FMO. FMO just made a statement, and it was the country head of FMO Singapore saying, we do not invest where there is no social impact. If it is not good for the society, we don't care how much returns you offer. So there are people who are serious about bringing up social impact, who are serious about building, and when I say investment in social impact, it's not just, okay, they're doing something good, so let's give them money so there are commercial success of 100x. It's about investment where you actually unlock a potential of that area, and it's a long haul game. It's not something where you start getting impatient in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Now where are my returns? That's not the kind of investment we are looking at, especially when the landscape is more fuller on the social enterprise side. So that's my. I think there's a huge potential for sure when I look at these startups. Are they investable? Of course they are. We have to look at the right kind of investments for them. And there is this saying when I was a child, my father used to say that when a child is very exceptionally brilliant in studies, it doesn't matter which school they go to because they are individually so good. And when a child is really tougher, then also it doesn't matter which school they go to because that won't make a difference. Yeah. So individually, the team has to definitely be able to. I mean, it will depend a lot on the team, the technology, the work, the real vision that they are working about, and what is the kind of impact it's going to bring in, how much positive social, environmental and social impact can they maximize, and how much can they reduce the negative impact. Those things will matter. But investors can have multiplier effect. A good ecosystem for such enterprises like these 12, and therefore the onus lies on you and me and maybe the people who are sitting on the dais a lot more than a typical scenario. If we could give a better ecosystem here, it could have a multiplier effect on these startups to grow exponentially. I do see a lot of potential in the investment side also. DFIs probably, and investment teams like Subudip's Omnivores, these are the teams we should go for.
Can I have a comment from you on this? I was waiting for you to...
No, I think, thank you for bringing that up. I think some of the names that were mentioned, so we, for example, have 7 such DFIs as investors in Omnivore, right? And what we have learned over the past 3-4 years of working with them, we have also learned how to do this better. Not just investing, but the other aspects, communicating the non-monetary aspects of growth, right? Also, I think there is more capital now which is flowing towards more ESG compliance businesses, more ESG compliant SMEs, more impact driven SMEs, because I think the global language about 7-8 years ago was that impact used to be equated to charity effectively, that impact ho gaya, returns ka zarurat nahi hai. That's not the case anymore. Like our LPs are wonderful, but they do expect a financial return from us. So we have that accountability as fund managers to kind of deliver on both accounts. But the point that there is a solid exclusion list and there are people who also give a certain weightage to what your impact thesis is, whether it's climate, whether it's farmers, whether it's anything else, whether it's health. And we're seeing a lot of investments even directly by these guys. Coming in, FMO invested in Dehat, CTC is invested in dairies and poultries and again, like Abhilash, I'm largely kind of...
These numbers. So it's becoming more important for the investor side also as much as for the startup side to make sure that they are environmentally and socially good.
So I think that is one big, learning here that our investors are also looking at these aspects very deeply, which at some point in time we just thought that investors just look for the returns, but it's not so. I'll bring in Shubhankar now into the picture. So Shubhankar, we all know that distribution is the biggest challenge that India faces. Looking at the length and the breadth of the country, and every 200 miles you've got a new country there. And the deeper you go, the more challenging it becomes. And you are a specialist in this. How do you think, being in the Northeast, these startups, which probably because of geography, because of demographics, because of various other challenges, can actually scale, and that's the intent of this program as well, to scale them beyond the realms of the Northeast region. How do you think, or what do you feel are a few pointers that you could, give these startups who are amongst us here?
See, in terms of logistics or reach, whether it is northeast or whether it is any nook corner of the country, we have seen omni-channel, digital, assisted commerce giving solutions which exist, right? So, most of us spoke about the fact that the businesses over here should not treat them as a gated community. They have to reach out to the entire country, to think big. And existing supply chain that is there is, for most of the businesses that I observed today, there is enough to piggyback on as a starting point. It is, they have to leverage the existing supply chain that is there through various collaboration and partnerships. Some of the businesses are fairly localized, and there they will have to figure out how to scale up. When entire India is their market, they have to, through collaboration, reach beyond Northeast to go to market. It is not about the product being manufactured here and sent to various locations. They will have to probably localize their manufacturing. Even that is possible through collaboration if there is a proof of concept which is already existing here.
Thank you. I think we've had a very interesting round of, different perspectives coming in from different sides, whether it be an investor, whether it be a mentor, or whether it be somebody who's part of the distribution network or sectoral expert here. I think, thank you so much.